this work is not just jurisdiction specific.
Yeah. So let's
Right.
talk about the international aspect.
Yeah, the work is neutral at the end of the day. It has, if you are doing any form of tech law or data privacy work or data security work or tech contracts work, the interesting part of it is that it has a complete international approach, okay, or it gives you that kind of exposure. Because when it comes to simple things, terms of service or privacy policy, it's everyone who needs that, right? Literally every platform who gets built.
Needs it, but your client, even if it's an Indian client, highly likely they need to give this privacy policy to somebody in Europe and US and Latin America and everywhere, and Dubai and Africa, everywhere, right? So the question is that, are you going to write it only from thinking of Indian law? Or are you able to take care of all the other jurisdictions also? And if you cannot take care of other jurisdictions, they might not come to you. And it will be a huge issue. Like, if you say that no, like generally what lawyers did in India until today, in most practice areas, they'll say, look, I know Indian law, I don't know about any other law, I don't care. Right? You can go to some other law firm which will advise you on the other countries. I can't help you. Now, this won't work. Let's say you are working in a SaaS company. Now, SaaS companies will have business in 50 countries, 70 countries, 100 countries, 150 countries. It's like that, right? Especially B2B SaaS, forget it. Like, they have to be in multiple countries. There is no way. Like, otherwise they can't grow, they can't survive. Somebody who has more markets will win over you, and it's like that, right? At least they will do US and UK, like some major countries, right? Doing just India, very, very rare. And even if they're doing India right now, 2 years later, they will have to start thinking of doing other countries, right? This is how it is. This is how that business is. Now, at that time, if they think you are a lawyer who's going to help them only with India and you are clueless about US, then of course they are going to find another lawyer, which is a very bad idea. They are growing at this time, you don't want to lose your client because you can do only one thing. So, how did you handle this aspect yourself?
So, see, at the end of the day, yes, you're absolutely right. A lot of lawyers do say that they only do Indian law and they restrict themselves, saying that we don't practice other jurisdiction. I see that as a negative thing when you're doing my SaaS or data privacy, because of the fact that literally apart from, and I'm 100% sure about this, that if you look at the contract per se, apart from certain jurisdictional compliances that you need to add, or making sure that the dispute resolution is done in a certain way, there is nothing else in the contract which is very jurisdiction specific.
You can
so
say
there
that
are compliances.
80% of the contract can be very similar,
Yeah.
20% changes needed. So that is the contract perspective, but even compliance.
I was coming to that,
right?
absolutely.
So if you are going to see, you cannot build 5 different data protection systems in your company, right? You will build one data management system, privacy management system, there will be only one. And that one has to be then compliant with Europe. If you have multiple countries, then it has to comply with European laws as well as US laws, maybe California laws and Indian laws and whatever laws are there. So you will build only one compliance system. Right?
So basically when I'll again draw experience from what I do and tell you about that, is that because I do data security framework and data privacy framework, as he rightly pointed out, you don't build 5 different systems for 5 different jurisdictions. That does not entail this kind of work. So what you do is, for example, the information security management system that I talked about, it's a global framework at the end of the day, right? So it will remain, the fundamental principles will remain the same unless and until some jurisdiction comes up with a specific regulation, which is not difficult to interpret. As a lawyer, you can interpret compliances or regulations, right? There's no jurisdiction specific interpretation that you require. The second thing is data privacy. Now, as I said, GDPR is the backbone of all data privacy legislations as of right now, right? Now, currently, I'm helping one organization set up their entire framework with regards to starting with Europe, US, Canada, Australia and Middle East. How am I doing it? The reason I am doing it is because I am fully, like, I know GDPR in and out, right? The basic the backbone of the structure is done. After that, I'm interpreting other different regulations, other legislations, and seeing what are the features that I need to put in the framework, right? So when I define, then coming to a comprehensive privacy policy, apart from certain structure of the privacy policy that remains common, you put a jurisdiction specific clause. For example, CCPA. If I'm collecting PII of users from California, then you put a specific jurisdiction specific paragraph on what exactly needs to be done. Then when it comes to Canada, if there are any specific, which there are, so any specific compliances, or basically they say that you need to inform in a certain timeline. So then I'll put a clause regarding, if I'm collecting information from users in Canada, this is my information time. This is where you write, because for example, CCPA requires that you need to give the end user the right to delete their data. Not every law does that. So up usme they had a specific point. So you give that. So my point is that at the end of the day, the framework remains pretty much, it's the framework that matters, right? Because that doesn't differ. कि GDPR बोलता है 100% कुछ और CCPA कुछ 100% और Canada कुछ 100% और. They don't say that. So it's on you to read the regulations, understand the commonalities of it, understand where it differs, and then help the organization make the entire framework. That's how it is done. And that is what, as you can, you will see that goes beyond the limits of being a jurisdiction specific lawyer. I think we restrict ourselves, a lot of people restrict themselves in thinking that because it's different jurisdiction, it's beyond my knowledge or my capability, whereas it's not. These are compliances, we need to understand that. These, like for example, let's take the US, right? US has different state laws, every state has a different law, right? Right now in the US, we are only talking about California with respect to CCPA. There's one regulation. It's not even that long. Point is,
of other regulations also that you have to learn if you start doing this.
No, but my point is, when I am saying from US perspective, when US का मैं बोल रही हूँ, so you see CCPA, right? It's one regulation at the end of the day. It's from a consumer's perspective. So if you have company, or if you have a potential client who you see has a US presence, then for their privacy, you just need to figure out the California part of it. Overall it remains the same, but for California it remains the same.
Is that even if you hire a lawyer in the US, right, and you hire one lawyer in the UK and one in Canada, one in Australia and every country, one in Dubai, in the end somebody has to sit and synthesize everything into one workable solution that the company is going to build, right? So if your information security system or information management system is X, it can be a synthesis of what all the advice you got from different lawyers. But unless there is one guy who can understand all of this and finally decide what we are going to do, all this advice will be useless, even if you get specific counsel in every country.
That's a great point.